Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Joining me now is Susan Rice, the former National Security Advisor to President Barack Obama and author of Tough Love, My Story of the Things Worth Fighting For. Ambassador Rice, thank you so much for being here. You called Jared Kushner's comments about Mission Accomplished ridiculous, to say that it was a great success. You called it laughable. You said it would be laughable if it weren't so deadly serious.
Right.
Feel free to expand upon that.
Well, I mean, it's really joy offensive when you digest the reality that now nearly 70,000 Americans have lost their lives. As you said, over 1 million, well over 1 million now infected. 30 million Americans have lost their jobs, and we know that number is an underestimate. How one possibly could declare that a success of any sort, mission accomplished, is just bewildering. And it is offensive because so many Americans are suffering. And we're suffering loss of life, loss of loved ones. And the degree of our suffering in human terms and economic terms is frankly far greater than it needed to be because of this administration's incompetence, the president's denials and dishonest statements, and their refusal to act on the information they had beginning in early and mid-January when we learned that this was a major problem in China. Any person with knowledge and experience of pandemics knows this was going to come to us in a major way.
Yeah. If you were still in your former job, if you were working as National Security Advisor, would you ever hire somebody with Jared Kushner's skill set for a job in government, a job at that level?
No, but that's nepotism, and that's not something that we practiced in the Obama administration.
Speaking of the Obama administration, Donald Trump has tried to blame a lot of people. As you said, he's tried to blame the World Health Organization. He's tried to blame China. He's also tried to blame the Obama administration for where we find ourselves today. Let me let you listen to him trying to do that very thing. Take a listen.
Last administration left us nothing. We started off with bad, broken tests and obsolete tests.
Your thoughts on that?
It's, of course, preposterous. The notion that we left them faulty tests when we left office in January of 2017 and there wasn't a novel coronavirus to test for at that time is false on its face. But the broader narrative that somehow the Obama administration left this new administration unprepared is ridiculous. First of all, this is 3.5 years into the Trump administration. They own whatever the situation is. Secondly, we understood very clearly the real likelihood of a pandemic. President Obama spoke to it publicly in December 2014 as we were wrestling with the Ebola epidemic. I set up an office in the White House at the NSC solely for the purpose of tracking global health events and potential pandemics and responding to them. We left them a 69-page playbook, which I call Pandemics for Dummies, that was designed to enable an administration to, walk through a set of issues and questions and begin to prepare a response. They dismantled the office. They discarded the playbook. They disregarded the exercise that we prepared for them to enable them to work through these kinds of issues in the transition. And they never prioritized pandemics as the catastrophic threat that we all knew it could be. And that, more importantly, Joy, they wasted the months of January and February in terms of gearing up our response. That's the time when we should have been surging the acquisition and procurement of PPE and ventilators and tests and all of the things that we now know, that all Americans now know are so badly needed. We knew that to be the case. We left a whole and complete national strategic stockpile. And for the Trump administration to blame the Obama administration or blame anybody else is purely an effort to cover up and distract from their own extraordinary failings.
It is Monday, the 4th of May of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Yes, all that came about over the weekend has now been reconstructed into a lovely gourmet dish. It might be one of those one-pan jobs, but those are the best. How are you? I hope you survived and are intact, breathing well. And I don't mean that as a joke. We are still in the throes of this. And let's remember, flattening the curve means that there's just a steady number of people dying rather than a rising number of people dying. And I don't consider that to be that good. All right. So we had a bit of a drama here over the weekend in my little burg of Rogue River here in Oregon, the southern part. And you could put a capital S on that. Yes, people are going to defy the shelter-in-place requests by our Democratic governor because she's a commie, a totalitarian. And don't say Trump, because that will get you kicked off Facebook by these people. So you have to be a little careful how you negotiate communicating on the community board. So, I don't know. A business here in town, I've named it online, oops, has put out publicly, well, I'll just name it. They put it out publicly. The Cottage Cafe in Rogue River, Oregon, wants to get back to normal and open up on Wednesday. So it begs the question, what do they mean as normal? They don't give a whit about spreading COVID-19. Kind of makes me wonder if they care about E. coli. And I don't like that shit. No matter how much they try to cook the shit out of their food, if it's there, I still don't like it. So, I'm just curious. I was called a coward, letting fear run myself. Well, you wear a mask. I'm wearing a mask because I don't want to get you sick, fella. Yeah, I'm a leftist. Jeez. I hate the fact that this has become politicized. We spoke about it on Tim Corrimal's show this morning. Oh, that will be rebroadcast this afternoon. Early evening for those of you on the East Coast, so tune in. But this making a pandemic political, really to cover up the ineptitude of Trump. And is it really ineptitude? Well, yeah, it is ineptitude. Because he can't even, hijack, all the supplies. Being pirates and stealing, the ship of supplies for his own gain, whatever. He can't even do that properly. I mean, look. I want a petty Mussolini to be able to at least make the supply trains run on time. He could have done that. But no, he's no populist, even though he ran on a populist so-called agenda. No, he's an opportunist. So, we are where we are. People are going to be defying this. But, to get back to the story of the Cottage Cafe in Rogue River, Oregon. Now, they put it out publicly. Okay? They're the ones that said that they are going to, well, they didn't say it, but they are defying the shelter-in-place request to get back to normal. And I'm just curious, is there going to be social distancing? Well, you're a commie if you ask that. How does that work? Now, they have not, this particular cafe has not done takeout in this time. I didn't want to bring it up. I think the reason they're opening up, I didn't bring it up publicly, because then it would have, well, long story short, the posts, except for the fellow saying we're going to open up, and any comments in defiance or questioning about that within that thread was taken out by the moderator. Any separate questions about how it's going to work, meaning if you believe in the pandemic, your post is taken out because it's too political. Well, who made it political? All the other side has to do in many of these Facebook threads is call you a leftist commie coward, and your post gets taken down. You don't respond in kind by calling them, well, neo-Nazi, white nationalists, anti-American secessionists, which they are. Call them that, and, so you don't call them that. But your post will be taken down because all they have to do is come in and start spouting off about Kate Brown, our Democratic governor, is such a totalitarian. It's not Kate Brown's fault that the Cottage Cafe did not get their small business loan and Applebee's did. That's why they're opening. I didn't bring it up. But that's exactly the reason. If he'd gotten a small business loan, and if he didn't apply for it, what the hell is he in business for? He didn't get it because Applebee's or somebody else got it. Now he has to open up because Trump said it's all a hoax. 100,000 dead is the goalpost now. I'm telling you, they got a final solution. And it's not coming out of Gilead Lab. Jesus. Well, maybe it is. No, they don't need, gas showers. All they need is a virus to run rampant and never test. See, that was another question. Have we had any testing here in our little burg of Rogue River? I keep hearing about 49 infected, none dead. How do we know that's a real number? We don't, because that's only the people who have gone to the hospital. So now they want to open up for sit-down service right next to Interstate 5. About 45 minutes from the California border. Opening up for all the maggots out there that got to sit down and infect each other so they go out and have life, liberty, and the pursuit to infect others as much as possible and as far-flung, too. The reason the numbers are low as they are in Oregon is not because Kate Brown is a totalitarian. They think the numbers are low because, it's all a hoax. No, the reason they're low is because Kate Brown got the lockdown, the shelter-in-place requests out. I mean, it's not even a law. And they make it sound like, we're just... So, yeah. Society falls apart when an agreement between neighbors is not honored. When someone says, you can't force me to be a good neighbor because it's my God-given right to be a dick. So what's next? We're going to take the sneeze guards off the salad bar because freedom? Only commie cowards use sneeze guards at salad bars. Come on. Really. And if it's your God-given right to have E. coli in your food, which is, I got to tell you, fecal matter. That's why I call it shit. If you want shit in your food and you're expecting the shit to be cooked out of your food, yeah, cook the shit out of your food. That's a double entendre. And is your God-given right to risk that? No, it's not. It may be your God-given right to eat shit in your food, but I'm not serving it to you. And anyone who does, I don't know, where's the rating? There's got to be a number rating for health code violations. If someone violates the health code and they get 78, my experience, 78, you're out of business or shut down. Man, I'm from the sort of mindset, I don't go into places, and I never worked or ran a place, owned a place that rated less than 98, 99. I thought I was failing at 98. God. So, what kind of health code violation is this? Do they have a disinfectant they think actually will kill COVID-19 on the surfaces in their place between people? Are they going to do that? No, because only commie cowards do. Jesus. I don't know. I suspect what's going on is very cultic, but hey. So, that's what we got going for us, which isn't very nice. Hey, what's on the rest of the menu then? Here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, well, of course, Susan Rice set the record straight again on the Obama pandemic prep that Trump keeps saying he wasn't able to find. Oh, the cupboards were bare. Yeah, the cupboards were bare because you sold off all the supplies, you mobster. On the rest of the menu, the National Rifle Association is cutting staff, salaries, fundraising, and events amid the coronavirus pandemic. And this is their money time. I mean, this is general election. This is when they make their most money. Oh, too bad. Faced with over 20,000 dead and counting because of inadequate care during the pandemic, the nation's nursing homes are pushing a sweeping lobbying effort to get states to grant them emergency protection from claims of inadequate care. Fancy that. And ignoring mail-in ballot proposals, Nebraska is forging ahead with plans to hold the nation's first in-person election in more than a month. Use a mail-in ballot out of fear about the pandemic? Go to jail. They're trying to do that in Texas. It is weird. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Benjamin Netanyahu's fate as prime minister rests with Israel's Supreme Court. Oh, my. And the parents of slain U.S. journalist Daniel Pearl petitioned the Pakistani Supreme Court to overturn the freeing of his convicted killers. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page, and do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. It's the only way we can keep this powerhouse of resistance radio resisting because of your generosity over all these many years. How many? Well, almost 10 now. Wow. 24/7, 365 continuous broadcasting. And thank you for your generosity. We are truly unable to do this without you. If you could afford, how about a latte type coffee drink once a month? I know, even in these perilous times, but if you could, it really helps. Our bills keep going up, I've noticed. Boy, they're not putting a moratorium on any of that. So, but I will say, thank you very much to those of you who have upped your monthly contribution. That was unexpected, and I cannot tell you how much it helps. Boy. So we take seriously what we bring to you here, even though we joke around a lot. I mean, it might be gallows humor. It's how you survive, maybe. But we do it from the heart. And we're not a money-making operation, and it would have been nice. There's been some scuttlebutt before about how to monetize all of this and make it into some sort of consulting practice. But I don't know. It's not about the money. It's about the message. And we want to entertain and enlighten. And we're able to do that because you're helping us do it. Thank you very much. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. You go to @NetrootsRadio. How simple can that be? That's because Tom takes care of that, and we thank you, Tom. I, of course, take care of @JusticePutnam, complex as that might be. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime. Get that linked up on social media. So far, I'm still on Facebook. We'll see how long. They have a penchant for wanting to get rid of me there. And what else? Oh, follow the show on Twitter @CookbookWest and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found, mixed in with all the rest of us. Okay, got that out of the way. One other thing occurs to me is that not only do these establishments want to defy the pandemic shelter-in-place protocols to open up because I guess a pastrami sandwich is much more important than infecting grandma. I mean, a pastrami sandwich can be pretty important, but I don't think it's that essential. Anyway, can't you get it to go? Apparently not. You got to sit down at next to a major thoroughfare, an interstate, by the way, and spread the virus even further for longer. They also want to make sure that they're not held for liability if people get sick. Well, exactly where does it stop? Does that mean my joke about, hey, it's my God-given maggot right to serve you shit in your hamburger, and there ain't a damn thing you can do about it. Well, I'm not going to go to your establishment then. And maybe as a foodie, I would warn people off from going there because it is a political statement this is being made. And I understand running a business is tough. Especially when you move from California, hoping your California dollars are going to go really far in Oregon, and then all of a sudden a pandemic comes and interferes with your lifelong dream. It can happen, and that can piss you off. And who do you blame? Kate Brown, the Democratic governor. It's her fault. All right. Reap what you sow? Well, I am not going to stand by and let these people just, wither on the stem, the vine. I don't want to see people gasping for air, no matter what their political persuasion. I get to say I told you so while someone's writhing, can't get enough oxygen levels into their body. I'm going to feel good about that. I'm not a Republican. I don't vote for Trump. Only those people act like that. We're Democratic voters, and we better damn make sure that we get Mitch McConnell, Bill Barr, and the rest of them. Well, my dream is Frog March to Leavenworth, but can we start with just getting him out of office first? All right, I better get in with what we have here offered here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And our first offering comes out of the Associated Press by Lisa Marie Payne. The NRA, affectionately known as the National Rifle Association, has laid off dozens of employees, canceled its national convention, and scuttled fundraising, membership, and shooting events that normally would be key to rallying its base in an election year. The pandemic has upended the gun rights organization during what should be heady times for the group. in the middle of presidential election and with gun owners riled up over what they see as an effort by authorities to trample on their Second Amendment rights, like normal. The NRA, which boasts about 5 million members, is that all? Oh yeah, they have a lot of guns, so they always sound louder, don't they? In recent weeks, laid off or furloughed dozens of employees, imposed a 4-day work week for some employees, and cut salaries across the board, including for CEO Wayne LaPierre. Oh, we can't get those darn Hong Kong suits. Damn. The financial issues, combined with the cancellation of fundraisers and the national convention, would have surely drawn a visit from Donald Trump, and it's complicated its ability to influence the 2020 election. Well, maybe it's because Vlad is a little occupied with rising coronavirus deaths in his country because, hey, it was fake news, deep state stuff. In a memo to staff, LaPierre said 20% salary cuts were across the board, while some senior staffers voluntarily, quote, quote, reduced their wages even more. He said the staffing reductions and other changes were intended to be temporary once we get back to normal. The cancellation of annual meeting had a significant financial impact, but beyond that, the health crisis has caused us to postpone countless fundraising and membership events, along with competitions, training seminars, and other revenue streams. Those disruptions are the primary drivers for our decision-making process, said Andrew Arlundium, a spokesman for the NRA, and weird accents are fully mine, so don't blame anybody else, please. Like every other business and nonprofit, we are forced to make tough decisions in this new economic environment. I patronizingly accented his voice in that final response. The coronavirus, and I hate saying the coronavirus, AP, get your style manual in order. It's coronavirus. Or you can call it the coronavirus pandemic, or just drop coronavirus and call it the pandemic. We know which one. Has exacerbated financial woes that were already serving as a drag on the NRA as its wages, legal fights with regulators, and its once loyal marketing firm, and now faces anger from rank-and-file members over stewardship of the gun group, Wayne. It's also facing rising public frustration over gun laws in the wake of mass shootings. Oh, no! Heaven forbid! Bernard Condon, Jim Mustian, and Jennifer Peltz of the Associated Press bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. Faced with 20,000 coronavirus deaths and counting, the nation's nursing homes are pushing back against a potential flood of lawsuits, with a sweeping lobbying effort to get states to grant them emergency protection from claims of inadequate care. At least 15 states have enacted laws or governor's orders that explicitly or apparently provide nursing homes and long-term care facilities some protection from lawsuits arising from the crisis. Well, I wonder if they're going to do that for cafes and restaurants. Sit-down service. Now the industry is forging ahead with a campaign to get other states on board with a simple argument. This is an unprecedented crisis, and nursing homes should not be liable for events beyond their control, such as shortages of protective equipment and testing, shifting directives from authorities, and sicknesses that have decimated staffs. And there is a good argument for that. But can you sue City Hall? Doesn't the President of the United States have an Article 2, like an implied immunity that says he can kill the citizenry of the United States because the Constitution gives him the power to? And Bill Barr has a secret OLC memo that says as such. Watchdogs, patient advocates, and lawyers argue that immunity orders are misguided. At a time when the crisis is laying bare such chronic industry problems as staffing shortages and poor infection control, gee, I wonder why we have a staff problem. And I don't mean employees. I'm talking about MERS, flesh-eating diseases like Staphylococcus. And they say legal liability is the last safety net to keep facilities accountable. They also contend nursing homes are taking advantage of the crisis to protect their bottom lines. Almost 70% of the nation's more than 15,000 nursing homes are run by for-profit companies, and hundreds have been bought and sold in recent years by private equity firms. Vulture capitalism, picking at the carcass of the dead. Of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Nebraska is forging ahead with plans to hold the nation's first in-person election in more than a month, despite health concerns about the coronavirus pandemic and allegations. The political motivations are fueling opposition to an all-male approach, and we don't mean by gender. We mean by the U.S. Postal Service. Bringing in your vote for the most part. Can't have that. What do you think this is, a representative democracy? Barring an unexpected change, Nebraska's primary will take place on May 12th. We like to call it the 12th of May here. 5 weeks after Wisconsin held the last in-person balloting, when courts sided with Republican legislators who pushed for that election to go forward, and guess what? They had a spike in coronavirus infections, and people died because they did exercise their God-given right to vote. They risked their lives, and they died for their country. Where's their memorial for the unknown COVID sufferer? I'll get one up. As Secretary of State, Bob Evnen put it last month, I don't think Nebraskans are going to stay away from the polls or not vote because of a microbe. Governor Pete Ricketts agreed, arguing that to do otherwise would disenfranchise voters who want to go to the polls, because a lot of people like to get dressed up and have their hair done. And noting that elections were previously held despite wars and pandemics. Yeah, well, you know what happened in the 19 pandemic, don't you? People died. Others, however, question the motives behind the decision to hold the first statewide election since Wisconsin's much criticized April 7th. We like to call it the 7th of April here. Primary, and express doubt voting could safely take place. Wisconsin health officials say more than 50 people who voted in person or worked the polls during the election have tested positive for COVID-19. And that's nothing to be celebrating about. Please. The primary will decide a Democratic contest to pick a nominee to face Republican Representative Don Bacon in Omaha's 2nd Congressional District, traditionally the only U.S. seat a House seat in Nebraska where Democrats are competitive. Voters will also pick candidates in dozens of ostensibly nonpartisan legislative races, which could help determine whether Republicans gain a supermajority in the legislature. And no wonder they don't want to have a mail-in ballot. Well, that brings us to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, It Only Looks Like Eden. The English-language debut from Polish director Małgorzata Szumowska is an entry into the burgeoning category of psychological horror. Add to the recent Midsummer and Gretel and Hansel, we now have The Other Lamb, an allegorical tale of religious oppression and its fellow traveler male domination. As the movie begins, we meet a strange religious cult led by the Shepherd, perfectly cast in the person of Game of Thrones' Mikhail Hausman. He's a self-styled messiah with the look of a dime store Jesus portrait. His flock is curiously composed of only females who are divided between wives and sisters, distinguished by their color-coded garments. The wives wear red and the sisters blue, but it becomes clear that this distinction isn't sufficient to channel the shepherd's interests. Among the sisters, his favorite is young Sella, played by Raffi Cassidy from Vox Lux. She's just coming of age and has known no other life, but becomes our heroine here as the flock is forced to move from their existing compound to a new home deeper in the woods. It's her intuition, her interactions with an estranged wife, and her hallucinatory visions filled with menstrual imagery and snapshots of an alternate life that show her the way out and bring us to a conclusion foreshadowed in an early scene of a mauled lamb. Szumowska and cinematographer Michael Englert capture a look which is intimate, stark, and sumptuously dark, with lots of through shots and use of depth of field, a face through burning candles, a landscape through wet branches. While gorgeous and disturbing at a lean 97 minutes, The Other Lamb wouldn't have suffered for more attention to the inner workings of the cult or more scenes exploring Sella's betrayal. Still, it's a stunning achievement in creepy. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Jason Goldman. The Amazon rainforest is under threat. Fragmentation, fires, and climate change are just a few of the hazards. In natural, intact forests, animals that eat fruits help to keep the forest in a constant state of regeneration, since they deposit seeds in their droppings as they travel. Could the same process help restore areas degraded by fire?
So there are a lot of tapirs walking around the study area, and they, of course, poop a lot because they are huge herbivores.
Lucas Paolucci from Brazil's Amazon Environmental Research Institute.
So our team asked whether they could be walking around and eventually helping to reforest this area through their poops and, of course, the seeds that are within it.
Tapirs are the largest terrestrial mammals left in the Amazon rainforest. Imagine a 500-pound pig, but with a small elephant trunk on its face. That's sort of what a lowland tapir looks like. The species is threatened with extinction, but certain areas still have quite a few tapirs roaming around. Using a combination of camera traps, aerial imagery, and field observations, the researchers measured the density and abundance of tapir droppings in 3 different parts of the rainforest over the course of 7 years. One test plot was experimentally burned each year, one was burned every 3 years, and one was left completely intact.
We saw that tapirs were occurring 2 times more often in the disturbed areas than in the unburned plots. And also dispersing 3 times more seeds.
That's a lot of seeds. Extrapolating from the data, in intact forests, a single tapir deposits almost 3,000 seeds in a single hectare, or 10,000 square meters. But in burned areas, the animals drop nearly 10,000 seeds. And while researchers don't know how many seeds can germinate after a trip through a tapir's digestive system, fewer than 1% of such seeds appeared damaged. But tapirs are just part of the equation. After they do a number 2, dung beetles get to work, forming the scat into balls before burying them, seeds included. Paolucci is now looking at whether dung beetles, like the tapir dung, are also more abundant in recently burned areas. Putting tapirs to work doing what they already do best is perhaps the cheapest method for large-scale tropical forest restoration. Such renewal is critical for carbon sequestration, biodiversity preservation, and much more. Tapirs won't do the job alone, but their work would help lower the price tag.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Jason Goldman.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
To His Excellency the Governor, from the ACLU, Ray, the 2020 elections, and the coronavirus pandemic. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. The April 22nd letter to Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker and other high state officials begins with 2 undeniable propositions: that voting is a fundamental right, and that the coronavirus pandemic should not be allowed to compromise that right. The letter commends the Secretary of the Commonwealth, who oversees elections, for having concluded that a voter qualifies for an absentee ballot if the voter is ill or quarantined or staying at home or avoiding a polling place as a precautionary measure, and then highlights other necessary steps, including robust education and funding to ensure that widespread voting by mail takes place, which will require, among other things, the printing and distribution with postage prepaid return envelopes of absentee and early voting ballots in a number of languages. The state should also expand early voting from the present 11 days before an election to 20 or 30. For those who will need to vote at polls on Election Day, a sufficient number of polling places is vital, because enough polling places in appropriate locations, along with mail-in and early and absentee voting, will shorten lines, allow greater physical distancing, and help protect poll workers and voters alike, all of which is critical at this time to the preservation of democracy. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1886. That evening, a workers' rally in Chicago, Illinois, became known as the Haymarket Tragedy. On May 1st, workers across the city and around the country held massive rallies for the 8-hour workday. 2 days later, the police had fired into a crowd of workers on strike outside the McCormick Reaper plant in the Chicago neighborhood of Pilsen. 2 workers were slain and many more were injured. Angry workers called a rally at the city's Haymarket Square to protest the police violence and to call for the 8-hour day. When the police attempted to disband the rally as it was ending, an unknown person threw a dynamite bomb into the ranks of the advancing police. In their confusion, the police began firing their weapons. A total of 7 policemen were killed and an unknown number of workers were struck. In the aftermath of the bombing, union offices and labor papers were raided throughout the city. 8 vocal supporters of the workers' movement were put on trial. 4 of the men, Albert Parsons, August Spies, George Angle, and Adolph Fisher, were sentenced to death by hanging. A 5th man, Louis Ling, died under mysterious circumstances in prison. Historian Bill Edelman explained the importance of Haymarket, saying, "No single event has influenced the history of labor in Illinois, the United States, and even the world more than the Haymarket Affair. It began with a rally on May 4th, 1886, but the consequences are still being felt today." Although the rally is included in American history textbooks, very few present the event accurately or point out its significance. Throughout the world, the Haymarket Martyrs are remembered, and May Day is celebrated as International Workers' Day. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labor.
This is a Radio Labor report recorded on Monday, May 4th, 2020. I'm Mark Belanger. The International Labor Organization has estimated that the COVID-19 pandemic will result in the global loss of 300 million jobs. The ILO is the UN specialized agency focused on matters of work in the world. The progressive news service News Click-In, based in India, has produced a report about the situation. It features comments by Pakamele Helube Majola. Ms. Majola is the spokesperson for the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, NUMSA.
Across the world, COVID-19 has affected workers as they struggle against layoffs, delayed payment of wages, and attacks on their rights to mobilize. The US economy, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, is expected to shrink by 40% this quarter alone. Black and Hispanic workers have been the most affected during the crisis, as are younger workers in precarious jobs. According to the International Labour Organization, or the ILO, the pandemic-induced economic disruption is expected to wipe out around 10% of working hours globally in the second quarter of this year. This is an equivalent of 300 million jobs worldwide. The ILO's assessment reflects the effects that containment measures will have on almost 2.7 billion workers worldwide. Of the estimated 3.3 billion workers around the world, around 2 billion work in the informal economy, often on short-term contracts or are self-employed. They have suffered a 60% collapse in their wages in the first month of the crisis. Of these, 1.6 billion face losing their livelihoods altogether. Workers in 4 sectors that have experienced the most drastic effects of the disease and falling production include food and hospitality, retail and wholesale, business services and administration, and manufacturing. Together, they add up to 37.5% of global employment, and according to the ILO chief, this is where the sharp end of the impact is expected to be felt. Workers in the informal sector, who account for 61% of the global workforce, or nearly 2 billion people, will need income support just to survive and feed their families if their jobs disappear. In Africa, 86% of employment is informal. The proportion is 68% in Asia and the Pacific, 69% in the Arab states, 40% in the Americas, and 25% in Europe and Central Asia. Migrant workers are not protected and are largely undocumented in Africa. South Africa consists of the largest group of migrant workers in the continent. These workers often sustain entire sectors like mining and farming that contribute very heavily to the South African economy. For instance, 50% of farm workers in South Africa are undocumented workers. Most migrant workers do not have South African citizenship and are often excluded from the COVID-19 relief. Most agricultural workers are essential workers, but employers are often not found to be abiding by the necessary safety and health regulations.
For the first time in decades, the bulk of the working class in South Africa is forced to celebrate Workers' Day behind closed doors at home and are unable to fully commemorate this day the way we are used to because of the coronavirus pandemic. At the same time, employers are cutting corners on health and safety, demanding that workers return to work when they've done very little to prepare the workplace to prevent further COVID-19 infections. The working class is enduring a relentless and violent attack from the bosses. The coronavirus pandemic has shown us that it is the lowest paid workers, the essential workers, who are actually driving the battle against this virus. And going forward, a united working class is the only weapon capable of destroying this corrupt and brutal capitalist system which is responsible for the suffering of the masses and which continues to breed inequality, poverty and unemployment. It's time for the working class to stop surrendering its power to butchers and for it to lead and drive an agenda for genuine transformation in its own interests and for the benefit of society at large.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about caring for each other through global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 38 degrees Fahrenheit. How dare they? Though we are looking to be about 73 to 75 here at the mothership. Sun and clouds mixed with the winds out of the west-northwest in about an hour or so at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Partly cloudy this evening with more clouds overnight. Lows around the mid-40s. Well, okay. And winds will be out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Tomorrow, highs in the mid-70s, maybe a tad higher. Sunshine and clouds mixed. Northeast winds shifting to the west at 10 to 15 miles per hour during the day. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County of Southern Oregon stands at 49 because we don't have adequate testing. There's probably more. I hope not. None are deceased in Jackson County as far as we know. Grass pollen in the local area right here at the mothership is high, and I ought to know. The air quality index in the region, though, is good at 22 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is very high at 8. So if you see those numbers in your area, you better take care. And let's see. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.21 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 78%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Or the world, depending on, how you want to put it. London is 62 and partly cloudy. Paris is 67 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 72 and sunny. Kyiv is 62 with a light rain shower. Kabul is 61 and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 77 and fair. Tokyo is 66 degrees and fair. Sydney, Australia is 57 with a rain shower. San Francisco, California is 52 degrees and sunny. And New York is 70 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And I should mention, there's coronavirus around the world, and unfortunately, even more people are dying and being infected. So let's not let up. Let us still take care. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Israel's Supreme Court began a 2-day hearing yesterday, Sunday, to determine whether Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's indictment on criminal charges disqualifies him from forming a new government. A ruling against Netanyahu would likely trigger a snap election, the fourth since April of 2019, as the country grapples with the coronavirus crisis and its economic fallout. Netanyahu and his main rival Benny Gantz signed an agreement last month to form a unity government under which they would take turns leading Israel after 3 elections that neither of them won. In power for more than a decade and currently head of a caretaker government, right-wing Netanyahu will serve as prime minister of a new administration for 18 months before handing the reins to centrist Gantz, according to the unity deal. And I'd like to see that happen when it happens. Will it? I doubt it, because when it comes time, yeah, you know exactly what Bibi will do. The pact has support from a majority in parliament, but several groups, including opposition parties and democracy watchdogs, have petitioned Israel's highest court to nullify the deal and bar Netanyahu from leading the government, citing the criminal proceedings against him. Responding to the petition, Israel's Attorney General wrote to the court saying there was no sufficient legal grounds to disqualify Netanyahu. He described the case as a head-on collision between, on one side, the most basic democratic principle of honoring the will of the majority — he didn't get a majority, though — and, on the other, integrity in public service, specifically among elected officials. 11 justices, wearing face masks and separated by screens as coronavirus precautions, presided over the discussion. A small group outside the court, also following social distancing guidelines, carried signs and Israeli flags to protest against government corruption.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Asif Shahzad of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Slain U.S. journalist Daniel Pearl's parents have petitioned the Pakistani Supreme Court, seeking to overturn a ruling that freed 4 men who had been convicted of 2002 of involvement in his killing. We are standing up for justice, not only for our son, but for all our dear friends in Pakistan, so they can live in a society free of violence and terrorism, Pearl's father, Judea, said in an emotional video message. Their lawyer, Faisal Siddiqui, told Reuters he had filed the petition on their behalf. A court official said it had yet to be admitted for further proceedings. A bare perusal of the entire record would reveal that there was a plethora of incriminating evidence, both forensic as well as oral, which proved that murder was committed and that all the accused persons aided and abetted the murder. Islamist militant Ahmad Omar Saeed Sheikh, a Briton of Pakistani origin who was sentenced to death in 2002 for masterminding Pearl's murder, had his sentence commuted last month, and 3 of his aides who had been sentenced to life in prison were acquitted for lack of evidence by a high court in the southern city of Karachi. Pakistani authorities, however, ordered the 4 to be kept in detention for 3 months. The U.S. denounced a high court ruling, with a top U.S. diplomat for South Asia saying it was an affront to victims of terrorism everywhere. That brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we'll meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.